Ladies and gentlemen, Season 5 has arrived, which means it's time for our top 5 guns of the season. I hope you guys do enjoy. We're going to keep things nice and short and hop into the action. There are quite a few buffs in the most recent season, and because of that, it's definitely shaken up our top 10 guns in the game, although the top 5 is not going to be changing a whole lot. There are a couple guns that are going to change, largely because this is a subjective list, and I do want to cater this list to what is most usable to the most people. Our first honorable mention is going to go to a gun that got a fat buff in the most recent season. Might not seem like it, but the recoil buff for the horizontal recoil on the AGR actually makes it one of the most consistent weapons for both the normal ammo and the 5.56 ammo. But this normal ammo is actually very comparable to the stats that you see on the CBR. Now, I will say it does have a 5 millisecond slower rate of fire, and that does tend to stack up. So while there are people claiming, hey, this is now the CBR killer, I wouldn't quite put it right there, but I definitely recommend giving this sucker a try because, like I mentioned before, with both the 5.56 and the normal ammo, it's got a lot of potential. As you can see, the recoil pattern is much more consistent, so rather than looking like two big C's, it now looks a little bit more like a very exaggerated S. This is my preferred SMG build, but obviously if you are going to go with the 5.56 ammo, I would tend to build a little bit more like an AR, so swap out the light stock for granulated, and you'll be good to go with a ridiculously solid bullet spread accuracy on top of really good range. Next honorable mention goes to a gun that was dropped out of the meta a few seasons ago, but due to a fat bullet spread accuracy buff, the Peacekeeper is now a really solid option, especially when it comes to the long range. Because the Peacekeeper does have Black Ops attachments, one of the things it always struggled with was having solid bullet spread accuracy because the only attachment option you really have is the aim assist laser. But the gun's increased consistency takes it from a solid middle of the road option to a gun that is now very close to the meta. You guys might remember this is a gun that last season I compared to be very similar to the Maddox, but now that it's been buffed, not only does it have way better bullet spread accuracy, but it also has better potential 4-tap range. The beauty of the Peacekeeper is it does also have a lot of versatility because of the different attachment options that it has, so if you decide you want to go psycho and throw on the rapid fire barrel there, it's definitely going to be more solid in the medium range as well. The rapid fire barrel does have some pretty sizable downsides for the BSA, but the recent buff should counteract that a little bit. Our third honorable mention is going to go to a gun that I believe last season was actually technically in my top 5, but like I said, the guns that are really 4 through 6 right now are so interchangeable just based on playstyle that I don't feel like you can really put a definitive hard stop at those top 5. It's a gun you're going to see a lot in ranked just because of how easy it is to use. The PP19 Bison is a fantastic option for anybody looking to not think a whole lot and just spray and pray. It's been in and out of our top 5s for the last 2-3 years at this point. I can't even remember, but it's got no recoil, it has great mobility, solid damage, and a fat magazine that means you can use it pretty much anywhere. The buff that the Bison got a couple seasons ago also means that it now has the potential to 3-tap in the close range if you land your upper body shot, so on top of all the things that I listed previously, it has that potential to be able to keep up with your switchblades, your QQ9s, and the like. Nothing too crazy with this build. You can throw on a different magazine if you want to, but I don't personally like the large cal enough to justify putting it on there. This is my go-to. One more honorable mention that you could probably make the argument that this should be in our top 5, but I'm not going to put it there just because I hate the gun so much. No surprise for me to tell you guys that the Holger is still the #1 LMG in the game. With a 100-round base magazine, you can spray and pray all day, and with a no-stock attachment that gives you stupid strafe speed, it really allows you to play like an AR as well. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this gun because, to be honest, I'm pretty sick of seeing it in ranked, but if you want a solid red dot build, go with this one, or if you've got the mythic one with a solid iron sight, give this one a try. Heading into our actual top 5, we have 2 assault rifles that have actually been personal favorites of mine. 2 guns that have been really solid for a long time, but have just never really quite been meta. The LK24 and the KN44 are 2 incredibly similar guns that have both gotten significantly sizable buffs in the past couple of seasons that now make them top tier long range assault rifles in the game, and arguably the best assault rifle in the game when it comes to long range. As you guys can see right here, the LK and the KN are basically identical in nearly every way you could look at. The very small differences you'll find is a 1 millisecond faster rate of fire for the LK, also a smoother recoil pattern, which means the LK is probably the more beginner friendly option. The KN does have a tiny bit more range and also 1 more damage in that first damage range, but this is about as close to 2 of the same gun as you can really possibly find in COD Mobile. The builds that I'm using for both of them are pretty similar as well, basically just trying to maximize range as much as possible because, like you saw there, it extends the first damage range all the way out to 40 meters. They both also have amazing bullet spread accuracy scores, which means you don't really have to worry about that no stock attachment, which would previously hurt that quite a bit. admit. The really big upside that you'll find with both of these weapons is that they now have really big headshot multipliers, which means they're capable of 3-shotting whenever you land one headshot. And the KN does also have the possibility of 3-shotting if you can land one chest shot on top of 2 arm shots. Like I said, very small differences between these two guns, but they're both incredibly solid options, and you definitely need to give them a try in season number 3. Coming in at number 4 on the list, it has been at number 4 on the list for the last years. I would argue it's probably the best gun in COD Mobile, but it's not necessarily the easiest to use. The SKS, and I'll also throw in the XPR, are the 2 best long-range options in the game, but both of them are definitely high skill gap options, which prevents me from putting them higher on the list because a lot of people just aren't going to feel comfortable using these weapons. Both of these weapons have actually been banned from competitive play in the West because they are so ridiculously strong. If that doesn't give you a reason to at least try these guns, I don't know what will. The spiel is pretty much the same as before. The SKS can 2-tap anywhere on the map, including 1-tap to the head with unlimited range. The XPR is a little bit slower alternative that does have a lot more one-shot potential, especially with the stopping power magazine. I personally like the SKS more because it is easier to use, but if you manage to master the XPR, there's no question it is the best sniper in COD Mobile right now. Fast rate of fire, great mobility, very viable one-shots at a pretty decent range, and a fast rate of fire make the XPR a solid alternative in just about any game mode you want to play. I've been a little back and forth on my SKS builds. This is kind of the one that I've landed on that has a nice in-between of having solid range and a little bit of recoil control, while at the same time allowing you to kind of play in some tighter situations. Disable is absolutely a must-have because it does slow down the enemy still by hitting any area of the body. And for our XPR, it's all about mobility. Obviously, you gotta have the stopping power magazine on there, and I don't want to sacrifice any range by putting on a light suppressor. That is the reason that we do run the tactical suppressor instead, and even though it's a tiny bit of ADS speed, definitely worth it when you consider the fact that it does allow it to 1-tap a little bit further. Alright, I've tried not to do this in past top 5 videos, but there's just so many good guns in the game that we're gonna have to cheat a little bit in today's top 5, or rather this season's top 5. So coming in at the number 3 spot are 2 weapons that actually got pretty sizable buffs this season. Number 1, the QQ9, which got a massive buff to its base damage in the first damage phase, and number 2, a big buff for the Switchblade in the upper arm and the hand multipliers. Both of these buffs drastically increase the consistency of the 4-shot, and for the QQ9, it actually ensures that you will always 4-shot in that first damage range. As you can see from the side-by-side comparison between the Switchblade and the QQ9, they have almost identical rate of fires, very similar stats in a number of different things, from their damage to their damage range to how far those damage phases last, to even the recoil and the bullet spread accuracy. These two are incredibly comparable and really comes down to personal preference. Obviously, the QQ9 does have a slight advantage whenever it comes to consistency of 4-tapping both in the first and second damage ranges, but there's a pretty sizable mobility buff for the Switchblade, and it also has ridiculously accurate hipfire, although looking at this, they actually have the same hipfire accuracy, which means I need to be hipfiring with the QQ9 a little bit more. Almost 1 meter per second advantage in the strafe speed for the Switchblade does mean that it's going to be a lot easier, like I said, taking those close range gunfights, and when it comes to playing on the inside of a hard point, the Switchblade is an absolute must-have, especially as far as bobbing and weaving between those tiny corners. Obviously, there was a big buff to the 10 mil ammo for the QQ9 as well. Me personally, I like the consistency that you get from the 45 round mag, but if you're feeling confident in your ability to land those upper body shots, definitely make sure to give the 10 mil a try. And for the Switchblade, our build really hasn't changed at all since it first came out. One of the beauties of both the Switchblade and the QQ9 is the base version, not really all that bad on the iron sight, so you don't necessarily need a paid skin either. Coming in at the number 2 spot, we're going to be cheating once again. I'm mainly doing this for these 2 guns just because they've been in the top 5 for so freaking long that it felt wasteful to not give at least 1 spot to another weapon. It is going to be the Kilo in the Krieg 6. Most of you probably not surprised by this one. I will give one caveat for both of these guns. Their mythic alternatives are way better than their base versions. So if you're a free-to-play player, these might not be the weapons for you, and especially for some of the more solid options earlier in the list, such as the KN44 and the LK. Especially the KN for the base version has a phenomenal iron sight, and if you bought last season's battle pass, there's an LK skin in there that has a really clean iron sight as well. With that being said, there is a lot easier 3-shot consistency whenever it comes to the Krieg 6 that does give it that slight advantage, although it severely lacks in long range, so I tend to play it a little bit more like an AR SMG hybrid than an actual true AR like those previous 2. However, the Kilo is going to have a significantly faster rate of fire than any of those previous assault rifles, and that's part part of the reason why it is, in my opinion, the best assault rifle in the game, and why it is the AR that is used most consistently in the American competitive scene as well. For a Craig 6, not a whole lot of changes. I do recommend running that Field Agent foregrip. A lot of people might not think to use it, but that recoil control can work wonders, especially when it comes to the consistency of landing those upper body shots. And things were actually timed well enough that Tectonic ended up popping in my stream earlier today to give me his new build that he's been using for the Kilo. He is, in my opinion, the best Kilo user in the world by far, and he's probably the #1 source that you want to go to when it comes to building out a Kilo, so I figured I'd give you guys his rather than giving my own. #1 gun on this list is not going to be surprising to anybody that's played ranked over the last year and a half or however long it's been. The CBR is still at the top of the list. #1, fantastic for free to play, great iron sights that you don't really need to upgrade by buying a paid version. #2, fantastic mobility. #3, big base magazine with 50 rounds. #4, incredible close range damage that's going to be able to really rival any of the guns on this list. And #5, solid long range viability as well, because you can build it out for a little bit more bullet spread accuracy. The damage drop off isn't too harsh, that if you need to, you can take those long range fights too. My build for this really hasn't changed a whole lot over the recent past as well, although if you like to build for a little bit more viability in the long range, you can go with the steady stock. That's going to counteract some of that bullet spread accuracy downside and help your horizontal recoil, but it's really up to you. That is going to be it for our top 5 guns in COD Mobile. Hope you guys do enjoy. If you do, drop a like down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys in the next one.